Good afternoon and welcome to this Wednesday, May 5th meeting, or May 27th rather, meeting of the Berkeley Unified School District Personnel Commission. Can we have a roll call?
Sure. Chairperson Alpert.
Present.
Vice Chairperson Roeder.
Here.
Commissioner Goldstein.
Present.
And Aaron, do you want to, why don't we have Sarah do it, just because you're both impaired and online for the roll calls coming up.
Sure.
Just to give you a little break. And yes, I don't know, Aaron, if you wanted to say why you're on Zoom before we keep going.
Oh yeah, I was going to say it during my report, but yes, I'm home with the flu. I apologize for not being there in person.
And we wish you a speedy recovery. We'll next turn to public comment. Are there any members of the public online or in person who wish to give public comment? If so, you can raise your hand on Zoom or stand up in person. I'm not seeing any. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Is anyone else? Do you hear that? Is that better now? Yeah, that's better. Very good. Thank you. Are there any hands online? Seeing no hands, we'll turn to approval and adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes needed to the agenda? I don't have any changes. Yes.
I would ask that we please pull for individual consideration 7B, 1, 2, and 3, and then 7A, 6, just to get a little bit of flavor about what happened there. I think that's the one that has only two.
All right, so we'll be pulling 7A6 to conference and
I lied. Not that one. 7A2.
7A2, which is instructional assistant bears on page 10, and then a 7B in its entirety to conference.
Right.
And I'll take those up first.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move approval of the agenda with those changes.
A second.
And I agree. All right, approval of the meeting minutes. Are there any changes needed to the meeting minutes, or is there a motion?
I'll motion to go ahead and approve the meeting minutes from April 29 as they are.
Second. And I agree. All right, we'll turn to our reports. First up, the union. Is there a report from the union? All right, seeing no from the union, from the district, do we have any representatives of the district online who'd like to give a report?
Yes, this is Samantha Tobias Espinoza. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fabulous. I wanted to let the Personnel Commission know that we have gotten the numbers on the layoffs down to 11.87 FTE being eliminated, and a larger portion, I think it's around 6.64, that is being reduced. So more people have moved to the reductions from the eliminations, and we have reduced that number quite a bit. We're still, of course, looking for opportunities to make sure that the people who are on the list end up employed and as whole as possible. And we are continuing to work on that. I also wanted to share that we are looking at positive moves in terms of the fact that the district has just hired some more special ed assistants, even though it is so late in the school year. It is a positive move that we are hiring new ones that will be able to start now and continue into next school year and reduce the number of contractors that we need to start out the school year.
Thank you very much. And can I ask for those numbers again? So it's 11 FTE layoffs.
11.87 FTE being eliminated.
And then an additional 6 something reduction?
Yeah, 0.64, I think it is.
0.64 or 6.64?
Yes.
Okay.
0.64.
In reductions. Okay. All right. Any other questions from commissioners for the district? All right. Thank you for your report. In that case, we'll turn to commissioner reports. I'll start on my left.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So shall I report for all of us that on May 21st, last Thursday, we had the Personnel Commission Classified Service Recognition event for people who have anywhere between 5 and 35 years of service, and there were people in all 5-year categories. It was a lovely event, and I especially want to thank our commission staff because they had to do a little pivot when the caterer didn't show up. And we managed pretty well. We substituted pizza for whatever else was on the menu. I know the cake was there, and I think everybody enjoyed it. So thank you very much. And again, super pivot.
Commissioner Order.
Thank you. Well, I'll just add on a little bit to Commissioner Goldstein's report about the recognition event. I too want to thank the staff for all the hard work that went into it. And I think it was an excellent event. Again, my kudos, I would say, to Vice President Mildred Scher, who was very inspiring in the words that she said. And then also to our chairperson, who was a wonderful MC of the event, kept it moving. And then finally, our superintendent, who was not only inspiring, but very energetic and did a wonderful job. And lastly, to our assistant superintendent, Samantha Tobias Espinoza, who had to fill in briefly at the beginning when our superintendent was stuck in traffic and I guess blockaded by some turkeys as well. So yes, I agree. It was a very nice event.
Turkey drivers or turkey birds?
Birds. I'll just add on my thanks to my fellow commissioners for their participation and the staff, and just to share that while there was a snafu with catering, they reached out to us and have made their apologies and reimbursed the cost. So we're mostly whole on that end. That being said, I'll turn it over to Erin for her report.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thanks to those present today. I'm going to go ahead and try to be as brief as I can. I'm going to go over the personnel activity report for April. As we can see, the PC team has remained busy as usual. Since our last meeting, we've established 8 new eligibility lists to help fill those vacancies and limited term assignments. And then as shown on page 8 of our agenda packet, our PC staff administered 179 exams across multiple classifications, so they averaged more than 8 exams per day. And then I'd also like to highlight that, again, with support from our HR colleagues, we processed an impressive 17 new hires in April, and 1 rehire and 1 new one new assignment. I'm also pleased to share that we held our 5th meeting of the IA SPED Staffing and Recruitment Committee. During this meeting, we were able to take a deeper dive into the recruitment efforts, including how the PC posts positions, areas for improvement and outreach and recruitment strategies, and we reviewed our testing process. So at our next meeting, it will be our 6th and final meeting before the summer break. We plan to focus on onboarding, ways to further streamline the process, site placement, and initial support for the new hires. So I'm providing an updated IASPED staffing summary. I'm not sure if it's printed yet, but we will definitely make sure to include it in the packet that we post online. Since our last meeting, we've had 5 new hires in the IA2 classification and then 1 separation. So we have a total of 231 IA2 SPED positions district-wide and 44 current vacancies. And we also currently have 39 contractors in use, along with one unaccounted for contractor assignment. Over the next few months, the PC team is going to keep on focusing on, sorry, filling those vacancies. Staff actually is attending the para project recruitment event held by ACOE. That's actually taking place today. So some of our staff are over there. They confirmed that there are 70 program participants who completed the course and will be available for active recruitment. We're also gonna start preparing for our own one-day hiring event this summer so that staff can be hired. Sam kind of spoke to this, but just an update on the layoffs. I have been meeting individually with affected employees. Sorry. And I'm meeting them through informal conferences to review their layoff options and their available assignments. At this point, the number of impacted employees has decreased significantly. Currently, there are only 2 BCCE positions that are still identified for full layoffs, although options are being provided to those employees, and then 6 BCCE positions that are being reduced. And then as for local 21 positions, 10 are still impacted by layoffs, and all of but one of those are being offered alternative assignments. So we remain hopeful that maybe additional rescissions may occur. But through the process, we're definitely our goal is still to support those employees and then help them understand their options. Lastly, I also want to mention that our classified employee recognition event was held last week. It was really nice to celebrate those classified staff and the work that they do. And again, I want to also thank our PC staff for all the hard work and the planning that they did to execute the event. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and it takes months of planning. So I want to thank our PC staff. And then we get support from HR as well, which we're grateful for. Also Izzy and Sally for kind of collabing to help MC and give remarks and read employee names. Grateful for that. Also, like as we mentioned, the superintendent, Sam, Miss Tanya Coleman, and then Mildred and BCCE, who all gave great speeches that unfortunately I had to miss because I was with Heidi getting pizzas. And so thank you to those of you that were able to help, as Heidi mentioned, pivot and come up with alternative food plans. So we really appreciate it and help save the day in a way. So thank you to everyone who helped. And again, thanks to those BUSD employees who've stuck by the district side all these years. So that is my update for today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for suffering through. All right.
I have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
I noticed, and I don't know if this is for Aaron or for Sarah, but on page 8 of our agenda, where it summarizes all the activities that occurred during the month, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's sort of been, I don't think it's a substantive change, but a change in sort of the way that the employment type column is identified. So I don't think we've had the identification be probationary for these employees who are new hires. I think in the past we've had it referred to as new hire. And then in addition, if I'm not mistaken, a promotional employment would also be probationary. So we sort of can't tell which are the new hires and which are the promotions. And I'm just wondering if there's a reason for that change or what.
Just an oversight. I can fix that and make sure that it appears in the packet when it posts, again, with the final minutes.
Okay.
So, thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right.
Maybe also when the packet posts, since we're going in and making a change to that page, the columns of numbers for the exams somehow got a little misregistered. If we can just move those over too. Is that a printer thing? Okay. PDF error. Okay, all right. Great, thank you.
All righty. With that, that concludes our reports. We'll turn to our consent items. Consent calendar includes all items other than item A2 and B1, 2, and 3. Is there a motion on consent on those items other than those pulled?
I'll motion. I'll motion to go ahead and approve everything except 7A2 and 7B1 through 3.
Second.
I agree. That will take us to item 7A2, which is instructional assistant bears, page 10. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Goldstein.
Thank you, thank you. And I feel so bad, Erin, because I know you're sick. So it can be a short explanation. Typically, I just ask for an explanation when we have fewer than 3 ranks. And I know for a number of these, it's been due to just additional recruitment rounds. I don't know if that was the case here as well.
Yeah, we had a very low applicant pool here for IA Bears. We only had 2 qualified applicants that were able to screen in this round. I think some of that may be due to the fact that when it's posted alongside with our other IA positions. The title might be misleading, which we can look at how we can make that clear as far as what kind of role it is. A lot of people don't know what bears is. And then also, it's also salary range is lower than than some of the comparable IA positions. And so it could be the case that when our applicants are looking to apply, they're not choosing this position to apply for.
All right, thank you. Love the idea of maybe somehow giving it special stars or something so we draw a bigger pool. Just for the record, item 2 is really just the IA2 special ed position. It was number 6 that was the Bears, which was also just one applicant, but I think your explanation makes sense to that, so appreciate that.
If you were asking about the IA SPED, I was surprised to see such a low number of candidates on this list, but for the next round, which ran 2 weeks later, we had a lot more in the poll, which you'll see. If you notice, we have 3 lists that went to this meeting, and so we just ran them back to back to back. So
that was sort of what I thought, and the reason I'll ask after these, as we continue on, is this has historically been difficult to recruit for. We've made tremendous progress, and we're starting to do a lot better. I'm not sure if we're ready to call it no longer difficult to recruit for, but we're making progress and we're getting there, and that's great to see.
Any other questions about this item? All right. Oh, I just closed my agenda instead of switched to it. Apologies. In that case, is there a motion on the item?
Sure. I'll motion for 7A2 and 6, since we talked about it also.
Well, we technically already voted on 6.
Right.
So just
that we go ahead and approve those.
I second.
And I agree. So that passes 7A2. We'll turn now to, excuse me, the approval of advanced step requests, where first up is H. Hom, who I believe is in person. So I'll turn it over to Aaron, and then you'll be able to speak if you'd like to come to the dais.
yes, so this request is for advanced step placement for Hamilton Hom, maintenance engineer. Mr. Hom brings over 20 years of experience in facilities and maintenance, engineering support, and project management across multiple skilled trades. The request also considers that this recruitment and retention challenges associated with skilled maintenance classifications due to the salary competition with the private sector and with other public agencies as well. So therefore, I'm requesting approval at advanced step placement at step 5.
All right, and would you like to speak now? Are there any questions for Aaron or the applicant?
Well, there's not really a question, but I just want to officially welcome Mr. Ham to the school district, and we're very, very happy to have you as a maintenance engineer for the district. And I was, especially impressed by the fact that the trades that you're knowledgeable about include carpentry, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, roofing, painting, concrete, and masonry. That's just fantastic. That pretty much covers the gamut of the trades that we're involved with in the district. So again, welcome to you.
Thank you, I concur. Is there a motion on the item?
I'll move approval of our executive director's recommendation.
And I'll second.
And I agree. Thank you for being here. All right, we'll turn to item, let me go back to the top of my agenda, item B2 on V Madrigal. Is that person present online? In that case, I'll turn it over to the director.
This is a request for advanced step placement for Vanessa Madrigal. She's an IA2 SPED at Thousand Oaks Elementary School. Ms. Madrigal brings more than 4 years of special ed experience supporting students with behavioral, academic, and social emotional needs. And she's currently about to complete a bachelor's degree in health sciences. Given the recruitment challenges we have with the IS2 SPED positions and the amount of vacancies we have, I'm requesting a step advance approval at step 5.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on this item?
I guess I have one question, Aaron, and that is, she has a pending Bachelor of Science degree. I'm assuming she doesn't actually have the degree yet, number one.
No.
Number two, does she have anything like an AA degree? I'm just wondering whether we can appropriately give Ms. Madrigal that additional year of credit for the college degree.
Well, she submitted her transcripts, and so she does have all of those semester units completed. So I figured that would be sufficient for education, even though it's not a full degree. A bachelor, I believe she might have her associates, but just given the courses she's taken, and I feel that they were relevant in this case, and so that's why I awarded her the education.
So your rationale is that if she had started, for example, in a community college, gotten 2 years in an AA degree, she would have had, an equivalent or even less semester units, and so she shouldn't be penalized because she went straight into CSU.
Right. And then I think just given the completion of all those courses, I felt that it was sufficient as well.
Okay, I don't disagree. Thank you.
All right. And my understanding based on our previous applicants is we look at education as either degrees or coursework equivalent to degrees. And I'm comfortable with that. Is there a motion or are there further questions?
I'll go ahead and motion that we go ahead and accept the recommendation for step 5 placement.
I agree.
And I concur, and that is passed. Next, we'll turn to P. Nguyen. Is that person present? Then I'll turn it over to our director.
So Request is for advanced step placement for Fong Lin, irrigation specialist with the maintenance department. He brings over 20 years of directly related irrigation systems and maintenance experience, along with a degree in electrical engineering and an irrigation industry certification. This request considers the recruitment challenges that we've had in this position and the prior turnover associated with this specialized trade class. Therefore, I'm requesting approval of an advanced step placement at step 5.
Are there any questions on the item?
I don't have any questions.
No, I don't have any questions either. I think that Mr. Nguyen is very qualified, and so I agree with the executive director's recommendation, and I would move approval.
And I'll second.
And I agree. So that is the last of our advanced step placement items taken care of. We'll now turn to item 8, which is our conference items, and we have item A, which is approval of new classification registered behavioral technician. And I'll turn it over to Erin.
Sure. This item is for approval of a new classification, which is the registered behavioral technician. The proposed classification was developed collaboratively by HR, the PC, and the special education department to support the district's efforts to reduce the reliance that they have on contracted behavioral support providers and to expand services provided directly by district staff. The job duties were approved by the board in the April 15th board meeting. And so now I'm recommending that the Personnel Commission approve the proposed classification, including the minimum qualifications and the salary placement as presented.
And this is a BCCE position?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't clarify. This was shared also with BCCE, and it will be a BCCE position.
Before we turn to questions and comments, are there any comments from either BCCE or the district on the classification? Not seeing any, I'll turn it over to my commissioners for questions and comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had asked Aaron a couple of questions, basically dealing with the salary placement. But before getting to that, can somebody, and maybe there isn't anybody who could clarify this a little bit, what is a behavior analyst certification as a registered behavior technician or board certified assistant behavior analyst? What's involved in that type of certification? Does anybody know?
I will defer to Sam. She has her hand up.
The board certification is a process where they do a combination of coursework, and then they also take a test, and they do practicum, basically hours that are supervised by what we call a BCBA, which is a board certified behavior analyst. And so we have BCBAs already in the district. We will probably be expanding the number of BCBAs we have, which is a position that is located in BFT's world. And so that we can expand how many positions that we can cover so that we're not taking away the support for students, but increasing the support. So it's a process where they take courses, take a test, and then they have practicum hours and ongoing training that has to occur every year.
Okay, thank you for that, Samantha. How many registered behavior technicians does the district anticipate employing?
So currently we have, I believe it's 25 that are contracted. We are not planning on starting with all 25 because we want to make sure that we have the support system built in to make sure that these positions are successful. I don't know, Heidi, if you were on the commission when the behavior
I remember.
intervention specialists were created, the
Yes.
BISs. That position unfortunately failed. One of the reasons being that there was not the support structure in place that needed to be there. And so that's one of the things that we were moving very slowly on this position and very carefully to make sure that that is in place.
Okay, thank you. As I say, I have a question on the salary, but that might be for later.
I have a question or kind of recommendation on the education and experience minimums. So it's currently says any combination equivalent to high school diploma and 2 years of experience working with students with behavioral challenges and or special needs in an educational, clinical, or therapeutic setting. And I was wondering if students wasn't more specific than we want it to be. Because particularly if it's in a clinical or therapeutic setting, that might be working with young people who are not technically students. And so I wasn't sure if there would be a benefit to saying students/youth or students and or youth or something like that.
The
I think
district
that-
doesn't object.
Yeah.
And any question or comment from the district on that change?
A question
Or
I
from the-
have related. I'm sorry, did you?
Oh, I said district, but I meant union. No, okay.
So the reason I think we have used students in the past is we're looking for people with K-12 rather than higher ed experience. So if we say students, or we want to say, students or young people, K-12 aged, I think that's really what we want to.
Right, because students technically
Clear.
could include adult students.
Right.
Right.
Right. So for example, I don't think these positions work at the adult school. Okay, so hence the precision.
So is there any objection to it being students and or youth, or is there a better language?
I think K-12 aged, and you can say students or you can say youth. I think because we're talking about them working, when we say youth, we're saying not necessarily in a school environment. And, I'll defer if the district and the union don't feel it's necessary to,
Because you've already specified it can be in an educational, clinical, or therapeutic setting. So yeah, so K-12 youth, I think maybe.
I would suggest TK-12.
TK,
Okay. Yeah.
great. Great. I think then we have consensus there. Did you have an additional question?
I do. I do have a question, which is just to sort of understand, anytime we have licenses or certifications, it's helpful for me to understand, and I think it's pretty clear here, we expect them to walk in with certain certifications, and we list them here, the RBT or the BCABA. And then we expect them to get a certification that the district, I think, pays for while they're here, this crisis management program. Is that true? That's something that district pays for?
Yes. Yeah, CPI training happens often, and we provide it to multiple staff members, not just RBTs. So it's already an existing practice.
Right, so it's in the cadence for training. And then for the renewal of the different certifications, the BACB or the RBT or whatever, does the district provide support for that, or is that wholly on the individual?
It's on the individual to maintain that certification, since we are requiring it before they get hired, that they maintain that. But
Okay,
we are providing the support for them to be able to maintain that through the BCBAs, providing the hours that they need of support and training.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this job description?
Did you have a salary placement?
Well,
Question? Not that it's our domain, but I'm sort of curious.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Sure. I don't think we ultimately determine the domain of the salary placement, but I'm just kind of curious as to your question.
Right, so on the salary placement, well, one question that I had has already been answered, and that is the behavioral intervention specialist although it appears in range 42, isn't being utilized. And that makes sense. So this position is scheduled for range 52, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what it said at the beginning of this. Let me just go back.
I think that's right.
I think so. Okay, so, I mean, this presented, some unusual aspects, which is that on page 46, we have the external wage comparison. So one question that I had is the last agency listed is SPG. What is SPG?
They are known as Speech Pathology Group, and they're the current provider for RBTs to Berkeley Unified.
Okay, so they're the contracting agency.
Yes.
Okay, and so just on them, their step one is $27 an hour, maximum step 32, and that's the lowest. But would it be correct that in SPG, they don't receive the array of benefits that a BCCE employee in the district obtained? So if we were looking at total compensation, that would be higher.
Correct. The medical coverage as well as other benefits of being a member of the union and having that protection is something that they do not have as a contractor.
Okay. So the thing that, sort of jumped out at me was the sort of differential between San Francisco and Oakland, which are in the mid to high 40s and 50s, and in step 5 even more so, 63 and basically $68 compared to, I guess, range 52 for Berkeley would be $44.63, which I recognize is pretty comparable, even a little bit higher than San Lorenzo and Castro Valley. But any idea what accounts for the large additional compensation both in San Francisco and Oakland?
Izzy, when I looked up those two job descriptions for both San Francisco and Oakland, although the minimum qualifications were similar, it seemed like it was tailored to paraeducators with more experience. And so, but the MQs were the same as what we were proposing, which was the RBT certification. In addition to that, SFUSD and OUSD just tend to have much, higher salary rates than the other smaller districts in Alameda County.
Yeah.
But I can't know for sure why they were so much higher.
And they're, in addition to the minimum qualifications, the job descriptions are comparable?
They're very comparable, yes.
Yeah. I guess my concern is especially Oakland now. Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but Oakland seems to be a pretty dysfunctional place to work these days. And so I don't know that anybody would want to jump to Oakland, but I guess my concern is, if a registered behavioral technician were hired in Berkeley even at the highest step, 4463, and then a job opening occurred in Oakland, why wouldn't they jump ship right away and take that job? So I don't know. From a recruitment standpoint, is this going to be difficult?
Could I suggest a few thoughts? on what you brought up. And I actually would like to start with a question, which is for the SPG entry. The amounts that you show here are what we pay to the agency, right?
No.
No.
These are the actual
Yeah,
pay
this
to
is
the
what they were
individuals?
advertising. This is what they were advertising in their posting. However, what we pay, from what I confirmed with the executive director for SPED, was around 45 to 55 per hour.
Right. So what we know is these amounts reflect probably 60% of the amount that we actually pay per hour for those positions. So if somebody had a calculator and did the math, I think what we'd see is that 27, divided by 0.6, becomes now, a number in the low 40s. So, okay, thank you for clarifying, because if that was what we were paying the actual agency, I was really worried about what we were paying the individuals. The other thing that sometimes equalizes this is actually related to your question about total compensation. So at this point, BUSD is paying 100% of the medical for the individual, and somebody else can keep me straight here. The individual, the spouse, I don't know if it includes a partial for the children or all of the children up to a certain part. Frank's shaking his head no. Oh, all for the children. So we really have banger medical now. And that's one of the reasons sometimes in terms of the wage and the competitiveness, we can do a little better. And I don't know if Sam knows this or not. This has always been a component that has been confusing to me. But in special ed, you've got mild to moderate, moderate to severe, super severe categories. And I'm sort of wondering if we have a little apples to oranges in application of those categories, which is why we see the difference in Oakland and San Francisco. I don't know if anybody can speak to that.
Looks like we have a comment from the union. Go ahead.
Just for clarification, the medical won't start till January of
Okay,
27.
all right, thank you.
So right now it is, you do have to pay for family.
Okay, all right, so right now we're riding more on reputation and knowing that medical is coming, maybe. I don't know, Samantha, do you have any thoughts about the
I
categories?
don't know why San Francisco's is so high. Oakland is because they have a hard time recruiting for any position, for multiple reasons. And I don't know how their layoffs have affected them. I do know that they also use contractors to fill in quite a few of their positions, even though they have been offering 100% medical for quite a while. And so I'm not sure those things, but it could be also cost of living that's impacting the San Francisco one, in terms of trying to make sure that people can afford to work in San Francisco. And that piece. But I'm not positive on why there is such a difference. It could also be that they based what they pay based on what they were already paying to the contractors. I don't know for sure. I believe our cost to for the contractors is actually closer to $60, but that 45 of it goes towards salary because there's some overarching costs that we have to pay as part of the contract. So, but again, I don't know for sure exactly what's going on there. These positions tend to work with the students who are in the mod severe to severe categories. And so it's, I doubt that there's a confusion about that or a difference about that. Unlike our special ed assistants, because our special ed assistants, we do have more than the average district because of being full inclusion. So I'm not sure that we have more RBTs than the average district of our size. I'd have to do more research.
If it's helpful to you, I just did a little bit of the quick math, and assuming sort of a 60-40 split, from the bill rate, someone at step one who is getting 27, the district is being billed probably 45, to cover employment taxes and everything else, and similarly, so this range 27 to 32 as a bill rate probably looks more like 45 to 53. So,
Right, but then you have to also add in the substantial profit that the agency expects to make.
right, in that 40% is, some kind of profit, right? So,
All that being said,
Yeah.
I don't think we're not changing the placement. Are we?
I don't know, that's our job.
well, no, and not for wage. That is something the union and the district negotiate, but
We could put them at range 53 if we wanted to, I'm not suggesting.
we can recommend. We don't finalize that. Aaron, help me here. Am I mistaken?
I think we make an approval for this range.
So so the range, so at what point did the union and the district talk about the range?
Well, I shared with them, I shared with the union and district and the special ed department the salary range proposal before it came to this meeting for feedback. And
Okay.
and I got thumbs up.
I know the union needs to be okay with the range. I guess what I would say is if you consider, I don't know what we use it as a benefits load factor for these things either, but, most organizations would use like a 25 to 35% benefit load factor. So if you sort of consider that, we are headed towards full medical, probably we're on the higher side of that load factor. And that might make us more competitive, certainly with Oakland, right? If at step one, applying that load factor brings us up, back to, $43 or so, equivalent wage.
Yeah, I was just going to say, my understanding is that Oakland pays full benefits.
Right.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is if you took hours, hang on, I'm just getting a calculator. We're suggesting 36.6 per hour, right? And if we multiplied that by 1.35 as a benefits load factor, that comes to 49.40. So, we don't know. I don't know if this number, maybe Oakland is just richer with us, but, this is, when I look at the other competing school districts, Oakland is much bigger than us. San Lorenzo is more comparable. I don't know as much about Castro Valley.
Right.
I'm okay with the placement, I think is what I'm saying.
Well, I guess I would sort of defer or ask our experts, both Samantha and Aaron, whether, I guess, whether my concerns about both recruitment and retention at this range, my concerns are justified, and what you think, I guess you probably think this range is fine since you're recommending it, but, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Sorry, I'll let Zach go first.
I would say that the district feels very comfortable with this range. We are not like it's not our be all end all. We are willing to consider if we have trouble recruiting, what that ends up being. But I think that we have heard from the people who are working currently from SPG that they are very, very interested in working directly for Berkeley and leaving the agency. So we feel like we will not have too much trouble recruiting at this point, and feel like this is a good starting place for us to look. And so we would want to look at that. My one question for Aaron would be if are we setting this in this current year and then anticipating that the raise that comes July 1st will hit this? And I guess that's also a question for the union if that's their anticipation, or that this includes this would be a brand new rate, and so it wouldn't have the raise on July 1st.
I was just looking at where it currently sits at range 52, but if the salaries are going to go up in July, then it would align with whatever range 52 ends up being. So,
Understood. So it would
yeah.
receive the 4%. So that's
Yes,
also in consideration, is that it will go up another 4%.
Right.
correct.
Okay.
I guess the last comment I would make is, as we all know, Oakland's been in and out of receivership in part, because they spend more than they have. So that's another reason I look at this and we don't want that problem.
The other thing I can add, Izzy, to your question as well is I couldn't find comparable classifications and positions in other districts, like neighboring districts, because they do all rely on contractors. It seems like for the most part, they are using contractors for this role. So, so given that, the contractors are our biggest competition, really, and they're not paying the benefits that we are going to be providing. So I think it will still be, I don't foresee it being too much of a challenging recruitment, given that our competition are contractors and we have a lot more to offer now.
Okay. That all makes perfect sense to me.
All right. Well, we've had one change to the experience section. Are there any other questions or comments or changes needed before we make the motion?
Not for me.
If there is there a motion?
Well, they're both looking at me. Yes, go ahead. I'll motion. Yes, I'll motion that with the one language change that we suggested in the minimum quals, we go ahead and approve this as it appears.
Yes, I agree, and that's at range 52.
And I concur. And thank you, Samantha, for being here and answering all our questions, and also the union. I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and ask us to take a 5-minute break so I can go blow my nose, and so I can be less measly when I come back. Thank you for your patience. We're now on to item 8B, 2026-27 Personnel Commission meeting schedule. Let me pull that up. So that will be
So, this item is approval of the 26-27 PC meeting schedule. PC meetings are proposed to continue on the last Wednesday of each month. So adjustments may be necessary depending at times on the boardroom availability. And unfortunately, the Board of Ed doesn't finalize their 2027 set schedule just yet, but I'm approving that we go ahead and, I'm requesting that we go ahead and approve the schedule as is, and if we need to make changes, we can look at other locations or other dates if necessary.
those all look good to me. Do we want to discuss now the November, December dates? Because we have 3 options for each of those. So for November, we're looking at either November 16th at 4:30, which would be the Monday, or November 18th, which is the Wednesday prior, at either 4:30 at Parker Street or 1 in the boardroom. Generally I prefer 4:30 because I think it's better for our folks who want to give public comment. It's better than 4 is better than 1, would be my preference. And so I guess the question is, do we want to stick to do we care strongly about if it's boardroom or Parker Street or at Wednesday or Monday? Either work for me.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that we should aim for 4:30. And for me personally, I don't have a preference as to the 16th or the 18th.
So generally speaking, I think I have a preference for the Wednesday. This way I don't mess up the dates. I know I have commission on Wednesday, one way or the other.
That's fine with me. So let's say November 18th, 4:30 at Parker Street
Okay.
for that one. And then for December, we're looking at either December 14th, it's basically the same thing. So December 14th at 4:30 or December 16th, which is the Wednesday at 1 in the boardroom or 4 at Parker. And I'm going to say, let's do the same thing, 4:30 in Parker, unless there's any objection, and they're seeing none. So we'll do that for both. So we'll do the Wednesday prior to what we would normally do, and it will be the 4:30 location, 4:30 time in the Parker Street location.
And Mr. Chairman, the only date on this long list that I know I'm not available is February 24th.
Great.
And the only date I know is September 30th. I'm likely to be out of the country.
And I haven't flagged any of them so far as I'm not available. So as of now, I'm good for all of those.
Okay.
Okay, so again, I don't know if we need to deal with that now somehow, or?
I don't think so. I mean, if as long as it's a different date for each of you, we can have a date where someone misses, unless if you each give a different date. If we want to change those dates and find a time that is available, we can. Otherwise, one of you can just be absent on one of those days.
I'm gone the second half of September, so I think
So we'll leave that.
that's not going to.
Do you want to try and find a different date for yours, or keep it?
Well, if we're able to, that would be great.
And remind me which one your absence?
The 24th.
Maybe I'd suggest we try to do it a little closer to the time. I know I have some travel between January and February.
So this is February 27.
24.
24.
2027.
Correct,
Yes.
2027, right. Oh, okay, right.
So this is the 2027 date in February.
Yeah, and we can wait until we're closer to
Maybe.
time.
Okay.
Because,
if staff can just help us remember, a few months out to look at dates. All right. In that case, is there a motion on those dates, adopting that calendar with the last option for both the November and December dates?
Sure.
So moved.
And I'll second.
And I concur. And our calendar is adopted. Before we move on from this item, when do we traditionally change the chair position? I can't remember when I said
It's
it.
permanent now.
I see. I guess
December.
December. Okay, very good. All right. So December will rotate, and it would be you would be chair and you would be vice chair, correct? Okay, great.
That's tradition, but there's nothing that requires that.
Right.
Listen, we can talk about it.
I can see the evil glint in his eyes. Yes, but normally that's the
I have no great
tradition.
need to be chairperson again.
Well, we'll talk about it. All right. That being said, we can now turn to the big part of our agenda, which is our budget. So I'll turn it over to Aaron to present on our. This is a public hearing on our budget pursuant to Education Code 45253 for the 2026-2027 fiscal year.
Thank you. So this item is our second reading and public hearing of the proposed 26-27 PC budget. As we know and required by Ed Code, the commission must hold a public hearing to approve its annual budget prior to submission to the county. So included with the agenda is a summary memo outlining our staffing adjustments, recruitment efforts, operational impacts, and budget reductions implemented over the last year. At the commission's special meeting that was held a few weeks ago, we reviewed the proposed budget in greater depth, and we also had business service staff in attendance, including Assistant Super Business Services, Pauline, our Executive Director of Fiscal Services, and our budget analyst, to provide additional budget information and updates and assist with any questions that we had. At that meeting, we asked clarifying questions regarding the budget, but no objections were raised regarding the proposed PC budget. So I'm requesting to hold this public hearing and then for the commissioners to approve the budget as presented so that we can submit the budget to Alameda County by the 30th of this month.
All right, and I'll start off just, briefly, I know, our commissioners are very well acquainted with this document. Who do we have online? Do we have folks online?
We have District and Frank.
Great, okay. Then I won't speak too much because everyone in the meeting already knows what we're talking about. Why don't I start off, actually, before I turn to my fellow commissioners, see if there's any comment from either our representative of the district or the union on our budget, and then we'll turn to our discussion as commissioners. Any hands? All right, well, in that case, before I turn it over to my fellow commissioners, I just really wanted to thank our staff, Sarah and Aaron and all the other staff members who worked on this document, and also our partners in the district. I'm grateful for the partnership of district budget staff in getting to this document and getting to a place where I think we're all in agreement, and I look forward to hopefully a smooth budget process. So I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners for comments and questions.
Well, I would agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I also am very grateful to Aaron and our staff for the hard work that went into putting this together, and it had a few iterations to it. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, because I know that you work closely with our executive director on developing the budget. I don't have any modifications to it substantively. I do want to point out that in our agenda, ahead of the actual budget is I guess you would call it a memorandum that talks about the key accomplishments of the Personnel Commission recently, as well as justifications or data with respect to various budget adjustments over the last couple of years. This is, we attempted, our executive director in particular, attempted to address some of the questions that were posed to us by a board of education member, and hopefully this does address those questions. So again, thank you to Aaron for preparing this document, making the revisions that we suggested at the last meeting, and it all looks excellent to me. I agree with the fact that when it's presented to the Board of Education, I guess individually by emails, that the memorandum go first, to try to explain what we've done over the last few years, and then the budget follow that.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think this is a good budget. I really appreciate the diligence with which everyone has worked on it. I want to point out that fundamentally in the year 25-26, our executive director did 2 jobs with the pay of 1 job. And that's why there's a difference between where we think what our actuals will wind up being in 25-26, as compared to 2 other years. So I really want to commend Aaron and give recognition where it's due, because as a salaried employee, sometimes that's what you do. You do a job and a half to bridge a tough time. And Aaron did that. And she also achieved just a tremendous amount of progress with respect to special ed, making sure that we're staffed, getting the cost out of that. And it makes me excited for the next year, 26-27, because when she's not doing a job and a half, and she can put more of her efforts to really finding other efficiencies and better ways organizationally for classified service to run, I think she'll do it, and she'll find other good and useful things that will help us operate more efficiently, and we'll see savings from that as well. So this is a good investment, but mostly I just wanted to take the minute to thank Aaron for all of the extended extra effort that has really characterized 2025 in particular.
I share the sentiment of both my fellow commissioners. I would just add, I think oftentimes when we talk about budget savings, we talk about trimming the fat. And I don't think that's a very good metaphor in this case. We have made a number of reductions in our non-salaried positions, but I don't think any of the reductions we made were of items that were frivolous or not useful, right? That all the things we cut were things that we were using. And we're making sacrifices, we're tightening our bust, we're tightening our waistband, but it's not because those things weren't serving a purpose, it's because we're making sacrifices. And so I've shared this before with our staff, and I want to share it again. Please do make sure that we're keeping a close record of the things that we're cutting, and that, for the time when it comes, because we know it will, when our budget the BUSD budget is a better financial shape, we will want to add some of those back. And pick up where we had left off with some of those reductions because they were serving a purpose. And I want to make sure we have the documentation so we can show where we made those cuts and where we want to add back from those cuts.
You did just remind me, there was one thing we had asked for at our special meeting, and I don't know if we ever got it back. It's a small thing, but I'm just curious if we ever found out. For the professional development travel conference item, we had asked the finance group if there was sort of a capitated amount that we could use as a reference point. I don't know, Erin, if we ever got that?
Yes, I did ask our budget analyst for that information. And so he said that he sent me the whole report, which I can forward to you later, but the percentage is approximately the same, which is a 0.3% towards the HRPD is what I requested.
So that's to say 0.3%, not
That's
3%,
right.
0.3%.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, well, if it's appropriate at this time, I move that the public hearing be closed.
A second.
And I concur.
And then I would also move adoption of the budget for 26-27 as presented, along with the memo that goes with it.
I second.
And I concur. And let off the streamers. All right, thank you all, and thank you to staff again for all the work on this document. All right, that brings us to our last section of the agenda, which is 2 discussion items, both of which were items that I requested. And so we're not expecting necessarily to take any action on these today, but I wanted to initiate a discussion about, both of them are about formalizing practices that we currently have and seeing if there are ways to codify those practices, formalizing, as I said. So, Erin, do you want to start us off on the step advance process review?
Sure. So these were requests that Sally made as far as what potential discussion items we could be having at the meeting. The step advance process review, I think, relates to how we've had over the last several months seen an increase in these requests across a variety of classifications. And it may be helpful for the commission at this point to discuss whether there should be a more formal list or consistency regarding which classifications are considered difficult to recruit for, and then what factors should be considered when evaluating those requests. So outside of the rubric that we already have, should there be perhaps a list of those classifications, and then also should the commission review recruitment data and use that in their review, use like the vacancy rates, applicant pools, turnover, declined offers. How do we measure all of those factors? And then also, because advanced step salary placement has budget implications, I think it would be worthwhile to discuss whether there should be a process for obtaining a district review or pre-approval before we consider step advance requests to the commission based on the merit rule 70.100.1. So I'm not bringing any recommendations forward. I just think it was something that we had discussed, that could be a conversation we have as a whole, with the commissioners.
And to add some detail, we've got two different documents that guide our process on the advanced step. Well, we have three, I guess. We have state law and the ed code. We have our rubric, which is a document that we've produced, and we have the contract, the BCCE and I suppose other union contracts that identify that may have bearing on the step advance process. And under the rubric, we have a certain number, there's two questions, right? There's, is the position hard to fill? And then does the person meet the criteria for, even if the position is hard to fill, does the individual have the experience and education to meet the criteria? And I think we've done a pretty good job over, I guess, my time on the board, on the commission, of refining our process for determining if a person has the experience and education. I think we've been developing that, and that's been good. On the front end, we have the question of, is a position hard to fill? And I think, to Aaron's point, I guess my preference would be, let's identify those hard to fill positions in advance and get agreement from maybe get agreement from the board, looking at what we should be doing, and then saying, okay, these are the positions that are hard to fill and are eligible for step advance requests. And that way, there's not a question going into it. And that list can shrink and grow as time goes on and as things become hard to fill or stop being hard to fill. But then there's more predictability, both for employees and the district and the board, in terms of what positions are eligible for step advance requests. And I'd love to hear thoughts from fellow commissioners. And also from the union and the district. I don't know if anyone is still online, but if you are, feel free to raise your hand.
I'm glad to start if we want to start. So the metrics of hard to fill, we have evolved in this process. We didn't even used to have a rubric, right? Until Commissioner Carter stood up on the table and, pounded the gavel and said, we need a rubric. And it was a good idea. And what we know is whatever metrics we choose for hard to fill, and it could just be, do we have, for the amount of head count, if 10% or more is contractors, we consider it hard to fill. Or we could look at just, when we do a recruitment, if we get, under a certain number of applicants. There are a number of ways that we could measure it. But what we know also is that it will change, in its nature. So it's not only in terms of measuring hard to fill, but I think also making sure that we build in something that says we reevaluate periodically to determine
a living list
when something is no longer hard to fill.
Yeah.
So there's that. Something I would be interested in understanding a little better, and it's really tricky in an organization that is very large. We have, in terms of total FTE at BUSD, probably something on the order of 1,200 FTE, roughly half teachers and half classified, or, and then a few sprinkled in of unrepresented. So vacancy rates really matter. When we talk about issues or consider issues of financial hardship, we need to be mindful that most organizations manage their budget through vacancies, through slow rolling, filling particular positions, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to make sure that we don't try to solve that problem, because that is a very big problem that is bigger than us. So one of the things I'm interested in understanding is having a look back, and it could be a year, it could be a couple years, I'm not sure what we're capable of, to really understand what has been the financial impact of our decisions for advanced step placement, for the folks who have come to us. Because if you consider, maybe on average we get 4 a meeting, some meetings it's a lot, some meetings it wasn't anything, over 10 or 11 meetings a month, that's 44 people on a base of, 1,200 plus, people employed by the district. So it's a pretty small number. So I want to make sure that we don't burn a whole lot of time on a very small problem. So I would ask that we get some of that sized. And I think my third observation is I would want to give our board notice of what we do and how we look at it. It's a dimension of oversight that we own, and I believe that we should keep it, for all the good reasons that the oversight was separated to begin with. So I am not a fan of asking for permission. I'm a fan of giving notice. Those are my comments.
I appreciate those comments.
Okay. So starting with the list of hard-to-fill positions, I think I agree very much with Commissioner Goldstein in the fact that these are very dynamic decisions and dynamic jobs which at one recruitment could be easy to fill, and for reasons in the economy or for reasons of geography or who knows exactly what, a school district, because of budget cuts, having to lay off a whole bunch of employees, all of a sudden they become available in the labor pool, therefore making potentially a hard-to-fill position easier to fill, and it could be vice versa. So I have to say, and then also the fact that sometimes the determination of hard to fill is not quite as black and white as they're on the list or the job is on the list or it's not on the list. There are potentially nuances for specific recruitments that may not be so apparent just looking at historical data, for example. So I don't think, as I sit here right now, I don't think I'm a big fan of having a list, although I think I am a fan of potentially within our rubric having metrics for, or at least guidelines for how the determination is made as to hard to fill or not hard to fill. I also agree very wholeheartedly with Commissioner Goldstein on the fact that for the longest time since I began serving on this commission, we didn't have a rubric. And it was unfortunately very hit or miss sometimes. And I think that having this rubric has improved things tremendously. That's number one. Number two, I have to dissent, I think, on the question of the budgetary implications of providing a step advance. Because our merit rules say that someone basically within our discretion is entitled to a step advance if they meet the qualifications. And so my feeling is that an individual is entitled to a step advance regardless of the budget implications. I don't think the budget implications are huge. My understanding is that the business office estimates that new hires will come in at step 3. When they're doing the budgeting, they sort of figure out step 3. Yeah, I think it is step 3. I'm not sure about that, but and so if we go from 3 to 5, yes, it's an issue. They'd be at 5 after a couple of years anyway. But most importantly, as long as we have this rule that says you're entitled to a step advance if you meet these requirements, then I think people are entitled to it. And then lastly, and I don't know if anybody's aware of this fact in the rule, and I know Aaron is because we've talked about it. Our rule on step advances already says that step advances will be approved by the Personnel Commission and the Board of Education. Now, I think we've taken the position, or at least staff has, that because in the position report that goes to the Board of Education, when someone receives a step advance, that's indicated on that position control report or whatever, and that's on the consent agenda, and so sort of sub rosa, it's approved. I think as long as our rules say it's supposed to be approved, I would request that Aaron think about, when we're talking about processes, what can be our process for obtaining board approval. And I think it's basically the consent calendar. I mean, I don't think it's this is not something that's going to be debated for hours on end at the Board of Education. But nonetheless, we should follow our rules as long as they're in there.
Well taken, all of those points. I have, even if so I agree that whether something is hard to fill can differ from recruitment to recruitment. And so you could have a position a classification which may not always be hard to fill, but a position which might be hard to fill for that specific classification. That being said, when it comes to what we refer to as hard to fill classifications, there's an understanding amongst the commissioners and amongst the staff that certain positions are hard to fill. IA-SPED, bus driver, right? The food, the nutrition services. We understand that. That's not written down anywhere. And so it could be that we have a list of hard to fill positions, which is, a white list rather than a black list, or that's not quite the right framework, but basically saying that these are affirmatively hard to fill positions. And so always when we're recruiting for these classifications, it meets the criteria of hard to fill. Separately from the list, it could be that a particular classification is. I agree and disagree. I think we need to look at it clearly, but I think either way, it could be useful to have a list of what we define as hard to fill positions, so that we all, and the public, and not necessarily the public, yes, the public, but more importantly, employees who are being hired understand that these roles are hard to fill. And so I see value in that kind of a list as well.
So I think we all agree a list is a good thing. Reevaluating it against some criteria from time to time is a good thing. I am wondering about the rule that Commissioner Roeder quoted. Do you recall which rule that is?
It's actually right here, the one about the board. You mean?
Yeah.
The one about the board. It's right there at the top of our rubric, 70.100.1, that says the last sentence is an accelerated hiring rate may be set with the approval of the board and the commission at any step of the schedule of the class.
So, okay, different debate for a different time about what that means. I think what I'll say is I have a very different interpretation of that rule. What I know in the board document, just, as a matter of clarification, when they publish, not necessarily at every board meeting, but certainly once during the month, what the changes have been in the classified service. Aaron, help me here. I don't see that step requests are ever something that is included there. It's normally more blunt status changes.
Right, not after the fact. They're not reported, the step advances.
Right. So, normally it's just, the hire, the transition, or, new assignment or something like that. But, notwithstanding, I think what I would just caution this group at, again, is consider that if we do 44 step increases a year, or let's say 50, let's round up, on a base of 1,200 employees, we're talking a very, very small percentage of budget. So, again, I think what we owe, to our constituents is, clarity on what we consider hard to fill and what we do and why. I just want us to try to remember on a $287 million budget, we're a 0.00005. of it. This particular dynamic is pretty small. So, in the priority of things here, I am all for trying to set up a list and then setting up criteria and I guess the process. For anybody who's administered, for example, a retirement savings plan, you have a watch list of your funds. And the watch list always lags a little bit, what is going on by the time you take action. But it's not a bad way to systematically show how you're looking at the issue, and with a couple of good key metrics, that might be a nice way to do it.
Well, I think this was a good initial discussion, and I'm gonna have some more discussions with Aaron. I think maybe for next meeting, it would be appropriate to come back with a draft list of, understanding the list is non-exhaustive, a draft list of what we understand to be hard to fill positions. And then some more kind of questions, clarifications about what the rules are, how the board either is made aware of or grants approval to, or if they do need to grant approval to, we can do a little analysis of that.
And maybe also just some metrics.
And some metrics. And so enhancing the current rubric.
Well, right, for hard to fill,
Right.
what kind of metrics, at least are we using today,
Yeah.
right?
Would this be different than what we already have in our rubric? Because our rubric has 7 factors that we look at that are listed already. So would this be more?
I think it's probably for the chair and the executive director to decide, if they think maybe a dashboard of those rubrics is right. Just as an example, where I can see that, the differences are sometimes differences. The IA SPED position has a different degree of specialization than bus driver. So, in theory, we have more IA SPEDs positions than we have bus driver positions, and our expectation of, what constitutes a robust pool for each of these positions is very different, right? So a metric that says, 50 applicants every time we do a recruitment is not meaningful in this, especially for bus driver. Right. So we sort of want to make sure our metrics are calibrated to the kind of position, the degree of specialization that exists. We also, just as an example, assume that our one-off positions, maybe are hard to fill. How many Title IX coordinators, we have one, right? And it's pretty specialized. And, the question is, is it hard to fill, or what would make it hard to fill? And, again, 50 applicants is probably not going to be the right metric for something like that. So I'm not trying to add many layers of complexity, but what I am saying is we have categories of classes that really need to be evaluated differently for what constitutes hard to fill.
I agree again with Commissioner Goldstein, and I think, frankly, for all those reasons, I'm actually very comfortable, and we worked on it, quite a bit with Commissioner Carter, that these 7 factors that are listed actually are relevant factors. And to try to, I think what Commissioner Goldstein was pointing out, there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all metric. And to try to be, in my experience, when one tries to be too sort of specific and scientific, the end result is you violate your rules all the time.
Right. Do you have rules so, it's like the balance between rules so general they mean nothing and rules so specific that you have to always break them, right? It's somewhere in the middle, in the happy middle. Well, Aaron, let's you and I set up a meeting sometime in the next month to both review the current rubric, a draft list, and also both the state regs and our regs that establish this process, and make sure that we're looking at all those different pieces. We can do a review of that. All right, any public comment on this item? I'll go once again to our members of the public online, not seeing any hands raised, so we shall continue to our next discussion, which is recruitment expedited process triggers. So somewhat similar, but different subject. We have undertaken very successfully an expedited recruitment process for IASPEDs. And this was largely in response to the fact that we've had a large number of contractors in these positions, which costs the district lots of money. It's a lose, 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 lose for students, lose for workers, lose for the district. And so in response to that, we've done a number of things that have modified our standard hiring process in a way to make it more flexible in expedite hiring. And my question to Aaron, which elicited this item being placed on the agenda, was, do we want to create a rubric, dangerous word to keep throwing around, but do we want to create a rubric or a set of conditions that would recommend us to initiate an expedited hiring process for a role if it meets those criteria? So we clearly have decided that IASPEDs meet that criteria. Do we want to look at why it is that IASPEDs meet these thresholds, and then create some kind of set of points that would have us do this for other roles as well? Or also stop doing it for IASPEDs once it has been properly filled.
So good question, and very related, I think, to the other one. A big part of what precipitated IASPEDs, and I think, other perturbations that I've seen over the years, is the use of outside contractors for positions that exist within union jurisdictions, right? Those are the ones that everyone is watching. And I think those are the ones we should watch. So the way in which the district has or has not reported contractors is probably no better or worse than most organizations that, sort of lack a really robust, tight process to track contractors. It's not unusual that an organization finds out it's got pockets of contractors that nobody knew about except the department that was bringing them in. So if you consider IT as an example, and I'm not saying I know our IT group does this, but it's very typical, which is, there are a couple of, employee IT professionals on staff, and then there's a raft of contractors that do all kinds of other stuff. And maybe that is 100% appropriate because we don't have job classes, or maybe there are also contractors because we've got, 18 school sites and only 4 employees, and we cover the other 18, with contractors. And should we be doing that? So I would say that this is a highly collaborative thing. I think this is probably something the unions try to look at closely, but I think it also takes the cooperation of the HR organization and, frankly, functional heads to come clean on where they're using contractors. Because most of the time people use contractors because they have an immediate need. They can't wait for someone to be hired or for a new job description to be formulated. It's people are not evil. This happens often for good reasons, and then it's the path of least resistance. And when you are looking for triggers, you kind of need the cooperation of the whole organization to talk honestly about where they are with contractors.
Before I go over to Commissioner Ritter, point well taken. I think, and I'm going to say something, and I'm not at all suggesting we're doing anything wrong currently with the ISPEDs, but I think there's kind of a general acknowledgement that we're being very flexible with our interpretation of some of our rules in the ISPED hiring process with broad consensus of the district and the union partners and the board in order to do expedited hiring. And so another thing, in addition to identifying triggers for the expedited recruitment process, another thing we might consider is creating an explicit expedited recruitment process in our rules that could be triggered by the board. And so it may not be that it's automatically triggered if certain criteria are met, it just may be that we opt to electively and with consultation with the union and the district, initiate expedited hiring for a role. And that might then initiate some changes to what we normally would be doing within the confines of state law, right?
So just to make sure I'm tracking on this, COVID would have been a good example. There was a big need for all kinds of jobs that didn't exist in anybody's CBA or anybody's, bank of positions. So are you talking about a process that anticipates an event like that?
I think that it could be either. I think it could be a section of our rules that say, in the event that either a particular position has a particular need for expedited hiring or a particular cause of events creates a need for expedited hiring, then the board can initiate expedited hiring procedures for some or multiple roles. And then, that would be something we would probably want to, I don't know if we would put it in our rules that we would need to consult with the union in the district or how we would do it, but.
Can I ask one other question then? Expedited hiring of employees or expedited hiring of contractors or both?
Well, we don't do contractors, right? I mean, we would.
Well, no, but I'm asking because, an exogenous event like COVID, contractors are quicker.
Certainly. Right? I mean, I think that's my interpretation is that's not in our purview, right? If the district decides that they need to do something urgently and need to bring on a contractor to do it, and they can't do it fast enough, that is not something
it's between them and their labor partners.
Exactly.
Yes.
For us, for our purposes, what I'm saying is if there's an identified need to hire quickly, that we would be triggering expedited hiring procedures internally.
So can you give me an example?
Well, ISPED is the classic one, is the one that we're currently dealing with. But it could be that you do have a situation like COVID where there is a need for expedited hiring, and the district might be doing contractors in the short term, but we want to, as quickly as we can, replace those contractors with long-term positions.
And just to follow it through, just to make sure I'm getting it. So expedited hiring would be, for example, waiving minimum quals. Expedited hiring would be saying this job description over here is close enough for the moment. That's what we're going to use. Are those the kinds of things that you're imagining?
What we're doing right now for ISPED is we're doing bi-weekly hiring instead of monthly, right? We're not waiting for, we're no longer using the ranking because we understand that there's a huge backlog, and so we're just, everyone's getting an offer. Are there other things, what other things are we doing currently around ISPEDs that are different than our procedures?
So, for the IA SPED, we did collaborate with the district so that on the PC side, we kept what was called an open and ongoing recruitment, where we keep, this posting open all year long, and then our staff basically closes it out every 2 weeks, only to reopen it immediately, but they'll close it out every 2 weeks to run the recruitment. And we've, for example, we have exchanged like the need for, we do the 2 exams typically for this recruitment. We do a written exam and a training and experience evaluation instead of a written exam, and then those that pass have to take the oral exam and then get placed on the list. And yes, because there is centralized hiring now that we collaborate with HR to do so that everyone is essentially offered a job. Of course, that's just temporary until the vacancies go down, because then we have to go back to the rule of 3. And so we have been able to expedite that. Another example for example, for our school bus drivers, we do what's called composite exams, where we keep it also open and ongoing, the recruitment. And as soon as our staff checks weekly, they look at the applicant pool, and as soon as somebody applies that meets all of the minimum qualifications, they close it. Again, reopen it immediately, but they close it and set up a 1-day testing, like a day where they will take both exams in 1 day. And so we set that up for that kind of recruitment. But typically what we've done for the IA SPEDs, we did with the ITs, and now we have no IT vacancies. Now we're left with the IA SPED vacancies, which we're doing this for. And I think that is going to be the bulk of our vacancies. I think our only other, just looking at the vacancy report, the only other positions where we have numerous vacancies are perhaps school campus aides. And so, but those are always just more challenging to fill because of the very, very low FTE, which is like 0.23, 0.27 typically for those positions. However, we do open and ongoing recruitments for those, and we do to some extent expedite it, not every 2 weeks. But we are doing something similar where we've changed it to T&E and written exam. But that we haven't centralized hiring for that, and we might have to discuss that with HR, because we have noticed that we are running into the same issues we were with IS-BEDS, where we generate lists, but the lists, when they get to principals don't seem to be filling the vacancies. So we are going to look into that. But those two right there are really where we have most of our vacancies.
So one of the things I think that drives, an need for an expedited process is the vacancies. And I think, Erin, there must be a list somewhere, the staffing list that underlies the budget every year that shows the job class and how many FTEs, we have. So IA-SPED must be something like 280 or something, just based on the numbers that we're using, and then we can know, some number of employees, some number of contractors, some number of unidentifieds or, what have you. And the pyramid is inverted and narrows down pretty quickly. There are, some number of job classes that have, let's say in a district our size, 20 or more FTE in it, and then a whole bunch that are, just small handfuls, small departments like OFI, 10 people, maybe with the same job class. So, what would be important, I think, would be in understanding, for where we've got many FTE, if we need an expedited process, it might look like, what we've put into place for, IA-SPEDS. We might have a different kind of expedited process if it is a key role that needs to be filled pronto. And, that might be the sort of thing where there just are a small handful of FTE or even a single. So that expedited process could, again, look different depending on what the magnitude of the position is.
Well, you've brought up a lot of issues. My comments, in maybe no particular order, is number one, I think all of our processes should be as efficient as we can possibly make them. That's number one. So that, I don't really know what the word expedited actually means. Because I think that, yes, there are various mechanisms that our executive director has put in place for IA-SPEDS, for example, which makes the process go faster. But with that said, I don't think we're violating any of our rules that I know of that in order to expedite the process. Nowhere in our rules does it say that the hiring or the department head or a coordinator or whomever is the one who does the hiring. That's determined by the district and HR, and if HR and the district determines that the most efficient manner for hiring for a certain position is that it be centralized, well then it'll be centralized. And Erin, and before her Charlie, made recommendations along those lines, and they were taken up. And so on the one hand, sure, that can be called expedited. I mean, I guess it is expedited, but it's not violative of anything. So that's one thing. The other is, I actually have great confidence in our executive director and in our staff, and also in the collaboration that they have with HR. And so if a position is determined, and with the union's input as well, that, this position has too many long-term vacancies, et cetera, and we need to fill them as soon as possible. And it's, in a way, it's more like priority than expedition. That certain positions do get prioritized because, for whatever reason, they've been identified as having priority. And I guess I'm once again a little bit reluctant for us to put in place some kind of rules or anything along those lines that would straitjacket either the district or our executive director, because I think they're doing a wonderful job. The only area, and I've mentioned this in the past, that I have a little bit of a concern about is, our current rules require that examinations shall be administered objectively and shall consist of at least 2 independent parts. That's great. In the past, oftentimes those independent parts have been a written exam and an oral exam. Sometimes it's a performance-based exam, depending on the position. We have come to be using these training and experience reviews, which do go faster. But I'm a little bit, I don't exactly know what the difference is between a training and examination review on the one hand and the screening that takes place for minimum qualifications on the other hand. I mean, if somebody passes minimum qualifications, they're eligible to take the written exam, or at least should be. So that's the one area that for me, could use some additional clarification. And then lastly, I guess, from everything I've observed with respect to the IA SPEDS, one of the biggest, looking at FTE might be a little bit misleading, because one of the problems we had with the FTE and the vacancies and the hiring of, not even vacancies, but hiring of contractors, was the Board of Education hadn't approved enough FTE for all the positions that were necessary for special education. And so consequently, even if Aaron and Samantha had wanted to hire more employees, they couldn't because there weren't enough FTE. That has been changed in recent months, and that's good. There is the fact that some board members would say, well, why should we approve more FTE if there's vacancies already in existence for the FTE we've already approved? That's the counter argument. At any rate, I think what I've said is very scattered and shotgun, and I apologize for that.
No, that's helpful, or rather, excuse me. I think that's all helpful comments. And I certainly agree. I don't think that we want, where discretion is effective, we don't want to limit discretion for the sake of formalism, for formalism's sake. So I will, as with last item, I'll have some discussions with Aaron, and hopefully we can come back with something for either or both, maybe not both, but at least one of these past 2 items. We'll come back with something next month to either continue a discussion or try and get something on the formal on the agenda. Any other comment from the district or from the union online? All right, seeing none, we will turn to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to give comment on any items on our agenda or not on our agenda? No hands. And our next meeting will be June, let's see,
June 24th.
June 24th at 4:30 p.m. in the chambers.
Right.
Any issue there? No issues there. No issues. All right, in that case, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All righty, and I concur. Thank you all. Aaron,
Thank you
see you
all.
later and feel better soon.
Thank you.